Hello everybody, Memo's back at it again. And I know everybody's in this shelter in place and the kids are at home, the husbands and wives are at home. And I just wanted to add a little enlightenment to the day and maybe for the moment. And I know especially the children, you were wishing you could send them somewhere and you could mail them off. Well, at one time that was possible. You see, early in the day, there was some children mailed, and I'm going to tell you about that today. And until 1915, parents could legally mail their children through the postal service. In 1913, when young parents wanted to get some time to themselves and send children to their grandparents, there was a much easier, cheaper, and more effective way than traveling all the way themselves with children in tow. The time-saving shortcut was simple. Mail the baby. Yes, that's right. In 1913, it was legal. Not so appropriate, but it was legal. The post office had just started their parcel post, which meant that you could only mail something up to 4 pounds. And when they switched over to parcel post, then people started thinking, well, what if I could mail the baby to go visit the grandparents? Give me a break. Well, they were put on the scales, they were weighed, and then the postage was attached to their clothing, and they rode on the rail train, and the city carriers would take them to their destination. So that was kind of a inexpensive way. So not only did the post office deliver letters, they also were transporting children. About 2 weeks after the parcel post began, a baby named James Beagle became the first baby in the country to travel by mail. James's parents, Jesse and Mathilda Beagle of Ohio, mailed the 8-month-old baby to his grandmother, who lived several miles away. Baby James weighed just less than 11 pounds, so he met the limit. And his parents only had to pay 15 cents for him to be mailed to his grandparents. And soon James's story made the headlines in several newspapers, and apparently it inspired other couples to follow suit, since there were few more cases of mailing children in coming days. A couple in Pennsylvania became the second in the United States to send their child through the postal service. They mailed their daughter through rural carrier James Byerly to relatives in Clay Hollow for the price of 45 cents. There are no other documented incidents of children being mailed in the remainder of the year 1913. But perhaps the most famous one was little 4-year-old Charlotte May Biersdorf, who was sent on an Idaho Railway mail car from Grangeville, Idaho, to her grandparents' house about 73 miles away for just 53 cents worth of stamps. Her story has even inspired a book, and yes, I have that book, so I thought I would be reading that to y'all today about mailing May. She went by the name of May. So it is a true story, and children did used to be mailed through the mail, and now we're going to mailing May. This is about little Charlotte May Biersdorf. I think I said that right. This book is by Michael O'Tunnell. And this is Charlotte May. This is Grandma. It all started when Ma and Pa promised I could stay a spell with Grandma Mary, who lived 1,000,000 miles away through the rough old Idaho mountains. But when I asked Ma if it was time to go, she just shook her head and sighed real deep. So I tried asking Pa. No money, said Pa. Train ticket cost $1.55. I worked all day to make that much. Maybe next year. But I just couldn't wait a whole year. So the next morning, when Ma bundled me in my heavy winter coat and sent me out to play in the snow, I made a beeline for Alexander's department store. Mr. Alexander called his hello from atop of the ladder. I need a job, I said. I need money for the train. Mr. Alexander smiled as he stepped down to the floor. A job? I wish I could hire you, May. But all the jobs around here are grown-up jobs, like counting money and lifting heavy cartons. I must have looked mighty sad because Mr. Alexander reached for a jar of peppermint sticks. The sweet, wintry taste didn't do much to cheer me as I slogged my way back home. So she was trying. She wanted to go see her grandmother. Things only got worse when Pa came back from work that night. He and Ma commenced to whispering and peeking at me off and on. Then they made me go to bed awful early when I did not like it all. Next morning, Ma shook me awake while it was still real dark. I was puzzled to see Pa's little traveling bag packed and standing by the door. When I asked where he was going, Ma only smiled and said, "Eat your breakfast." Just then, someone knocked on our front door. Pa opened up to Ma's cousin Leonard. "Come along, May," Pa said, grabbing the suitcase as Ma helped me with my coat. "We're going to the post office with Leonard." He held up his hand as I opened my mouth. "No questions," Pa said with a wink. Ma hugged and kissed me before Pa took my hand and led me out the dark winter air. Before long, I stood taking in the funny smells of the Grangeville post office, glue and canvas bags and old wooden floors. Meanwhile, Pa marched right up to Postmaster Perkins and said, "Sam, you got some new rules for mailing packages. I know boxes can weigh up to 50 pounds nowadays, but what sort of things can you send?" Mr. Perkins looked at Pa real strange like and said, "What you got in mind, John?" "It's May," said Pa. "We'd like to mail her to Lewiston. Leonard here mans the mail car on the train, as you well know. He can take good care of our package." "Sure thing, Sam," said Leonard. I was flabbergasted by Pa, and so was Mr. Perkins. "Mailing May?" he mumbled, shaking his head. "Let's see. The postal code says not to mail lizards or insects or anything smelly." Mr. Perkins looked at me over his glasses and then sniffed. "Guess you passed the smell test. But what about girls?" I asked. "Can you mail me?" "Well, the rule book says nothing about children, but it is permissible to mail baby chicks." Mr. Perkins smiled. "Let's find out exactly how much you and your valise weigh." I scrambled up onto the big scale and Pa set his traveling bag next to me. 48 pounds and 8 ounces. Biggest baby chick on record. Mr. Perkins ran his finger down a chart hanging near the scale and turned to Pa. "To mail May from Grangeville to Lewiston all cost 53 cents. "Well, Leonard, looks like you'll be in charge of some poultry in this mail run." Before I knew it, Mr. Perkins had glued 53 cents worth of stamps on the back of my coat, along with a label that read, it had the address to her grandmother's house. I can't read the handwriting. Pa hugged me and told me to be good to Grandma Mary. Then he was gone, and there was a package sitting in the post office. There I was, a package sitting in the post office. Before long, Leonard carted me and the rest of the mail to the train station. The big black steam engine was already waiting, hissing and snorting like a boar hog. The sight made me go all tingly, seeing as I'd never even ridden on the train before. After Leonard loaded the mail bags and a few other packages, he called out, "Time to go, May." Then he helped me up the steel steps. At exactly 7 o'clock, the train chugged away from my home and headed down the mountain. I felt as adventuresome as Daniel Boone. The inside of the mail car was like a little post office, and Leonard got busy right away, sorting mail to be dropped off at towns along the way. I curled up near by the stove to keep warm and watched. Whenever Leonard had a free minute, he'd take me to the door for a look. My, oh my, what sights there were to see. Why, we hung on the edge of the mountainsides and crawled through tunnels. We crossed deep valleys on top of tall, spidery trestles that Leonard called steel on stilts. Then long about Lapawai Canyon, where the train track twists back and forth down the mountain, I began to feel somewhat less adventuresome. Instead, I was feeling dizzy and weak in the stomach. I was about to run to get some fresh air when I heard the angry voice at the door. "Leonard," yelled a man in the uniform, "that girl better have a ticket or money to buy one." It was Mr. Harry Morris, the train's conductor. I hid behind Leonard as he explained that I was a package, not a passenger. Then he showed Mr. Morris the stamps on my coat. That cranky old conductor slapped his knee and laughed out loud. "I've seen everything now," said Mr. Morris, wiping his eyes. Well, Mr. Morris plumb scared the dizziness right out of me. Even my stomach seemed better, and I started feeling hungry. Leonard said lunch could be at Grandma's Mary's. The train made a few more stops at towns like Sweetwater and Joseph before we pulled into the Lewiston Railroad Station. Since this was the end of the line, Leonard had time to be my mail carrier, and he headed for Grandma Mary's place. The second I laid eyes on Grandma Mary, I felt downright warm inside. Ma and Pa had kept their promise after all, with a little help from the United States Postal Service. How about that? I hope y'all enjoyed learning about mailing children, and tomorrow we will talk about other things that can be mailed, but no children anymore. Sorry, people. Stay tuned. Enjoy.